Blockbuster didn't just lose to Netflix. There was more to the story. So everybody thinks they know why Blockbuster failed, right? Netflix showed up, Blockbuster ignored it, streaming took over, and suddenly every old Blockbuster became either a dentist's office, a vape shop, or somehow still a Spirit Halloween. And that version is not totally wrong. It's just too clean. Because Blockbuster didn't wake up one morning as a healthy company and go, uh-oh, somebody mailed a DVD. That's not how businesses usually fail. Most of the time, the business gets weaker first, and then the market changes, and then everybody acts surprised. Well, that's why I wanted to look at Blockbuster through the Clear Path to Cash app, right? So I took the last 5 years of Blockbuster's life. Not because the app needed to predict Netflix. I mean, come on, that'd be ridiculous. I mean, there's no software sitting there in 2004 saying, careful, Reed Hastings is about to ruin your weekend plans. But what the app could have shown is much more useful. It could have shown that Blockbuster was becoming fragile well before the failure became obvious. And when I ran the numbers, the app gave Blockbuster a D. That's a risk score. C being average, A being less than average risk, D being more than average risk. Now, a D is not the same as saying that the company's dead. A D is more like when your check engine light comes on and your friend says, it's probably fine, but the car's making a sound like a blender that's full of quarters. So you can keep driving, but you should probably ask a few harder questions. Well, with Blockbuster, there were 3 big warning signs. The first big warning sign was profitability, right? There was a lot of pressure there. This is the one people miss because Blockbuster still looks strong from the outside, right? It had stores everywhere with customers coming in and out. It had the big blue and yellow sign that we all recognize, the movie ticket. It had that weird carpet smell that somehow said, hey, this is where America makes entertainment decisions, right? But activity is not the same thing as financial health. A business can be busy and still be getting weaker. This happens all the time. Owners say, we're slammed. And sometimes what they really mean is, we're working really hard to make a little bit of money, maybe even less money than we should. And that's why profitability trends matter. The question is not, are people still buying? The question is this business producing enough profit to support what comes next? For Blockbuster, that question mattered because the next move was going to be expensive. Competing with Netflix was expensive. Think about it. They had to build out the whole digital capability. That was expensive. Changing the whole store model. That was expensive, right? Even closing stores was expensive. And that's the annoying part about a heavy business model. You have to pay money to keep it, and then you got to pay money again to get out of it. So the first warning sign was simple. Blockbuster needed profit strength to fund the next version of the business, and the trends were making that harder. The second warning sign was shrinking financial flexibility, right? They were having less cash. They were in trouble getting cash. This is where a lot of businesses get into trouble. They don't fail the exact moment the sales go down, right? They fail when they lose options. They're asking themselves, hey, can we borrow, right? Can we get investment? Can we invest, right? Can we survive a bad year? What if we test something new, right? Can we make a mistake without the whole thing turning into a board meeting with pastries and panic? That's what financial flexibility gives you. It gives you time. It gives you choices. It gives you the ability to say, let's try this, instead of, hey, we got one shot, and if this doesn't work, everybody needs to update your LinkedIn, right? With Blockbuster, this is a serious issue. If financial flexibility was shrinking, then leadership had less room to experiment at the exact moment when the business needed experimentation. That's the real danger here, right? Not that Netflix was growing. The danger was that Blockbuster needed to respond while its ability to respond was getting weaker. That's a whole different story than what we were told. And it's much more useful than just saying, you know what, they should have just bought Netflix. Everybody loves giving advice after the movie's over, right? It's like watching the Titanic and saying, honestly, I would have slightly turned to the left. Very helpful. Thank you, Captain Spreadsheet, right? But the real question is, did Blockbuster still have the financial room to change while change was still possible? That's the warning sign number 2, right? That the company needed options at the exact moment when those options were getting more and more expensive. That leads me to the third warning sign, and that was the weight of the business model. It was super heavy. This is a big one because Blockbuster was built for a world where people had to come to the store. That meant physical locations. That meant employees. They had to have the inventory on the shelf, pay rent, right? Utilities, right? Local operations, and rows of movies where every case somehow had the wrong DVD in it. The model worked when the store was the customer experience. But once the customer experience started moving away from the store, Blockbuster had a problem. Netflix wasn't just a competitor. Netflix was a lighter business model attacking a heavier one. And that's what made it dangerous, right? It's hard to pivot quickly when your strategy is attached to thousands of leases and a wall full of previously viewed DVDs. A heavy model can work, but when the market starts moving faster, heavy gets dangerous because every choice costs money. Close stores, that's expensive. Keep stores open? Well, that's expensive. Build digital? That's also expensive. But wait and see what happens? That's usually the most expensive option of all. This is where Blockbuster was getting boxed in because the business model was getting heavier at the exact same time it needed to become lighter. And that's the part that the app helped me see, right? Not that Netflix is coming, not that streaming will win, but this company had less room for error than it used to. That's the warning. Because if a business has strong profits, strong cash flow, and room to maneuver, then their competition has a problem. But if a business has weak profitability, shrinking flexibility, and a heavy business model, well then competition becomes something a whole lot worse in your life. It becomes a thing that exposes everything that was already wrong. So could we have predicted Blockbuster's failure a little earlier? Well, I'm not like a fortune teller. I don't think any app or spreadsheet or diagnosis that we do would say that, in the future, every human will watch 12 seasons of something on a phone while ignoring their laundry. I don't think we get that far into it, but it could have shown that Blockbuster was becoming financially fragile. And that's the useful part. If I were sitting with Blockbuster leadership earlier in the story, I would not start with, hey, you're doomed, right? That's not advisory. That's just being dramatic in a conference room. I would have asked 3 questions. Is the current model producing enough profit to fund the next version of this company? How much financial flexibility do we have if customer behavior changes faster than expected? Like people want to stay home. They don't want to go to the store anymore. And what parts of this business are too heavy to carry into the future? Those questions would have forced a whole different conversation. Not how do we protect the store model forever, but how do we use the brand while it still has power? How do we reduce dependence on physical locations before we're forced to? How do we protect cash and borrowing capacity while we still have choices? That was the window. It's one we face all the time in a lot of different businesses. Blockbuster still had a brand, it still had customers and relationships, and it still had people's attention. Still does today, right? The last Blockbuster still is a thing. But the financial trends were showing that the window wasn't going to stay open forever. And that's when the move needed to happen. Earlier, when the company still had options. Not later, when every option had turned into a rescue plan. So yeah, Netflix mattered. Streaming mattered, right? Late fees, leadership, all that stuff mattered. But the more useful lesson in this is that Blockbuster didn't fail just because the market changed. Blockbuster failed because when the market changed, it didn't have enough flexibility left to respond fast enough. It couldn't afford it. And that's what I wanted to find, right? Not the headline. It was the pressure underneath the headline. Because by the time everybody agrees there's a problem, the best options are usually gone. In that moment, we know it. And the clear path to cash was built for that moment.